afternoon. You're listening to The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. I'm your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. Hi, Dad.
How are you?
Good. Today we have a very special guest. We're here with Certified Grief Recovery Specialist Sharon Brubaker. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
So today we're going to be talking about how to cope and deal with grief and sadness, which, is really the main reason why we brought Sharon on the show, is because she has so much knowledge and expertise that we do not have. So first I want to jump into, Sharon, how did you get started? I hear there's a background story, and I want to know how that experience really affected you and adds to your knowledge.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. 12 years ago, my nephew, Austin Tyler, drowned in Lake Havasu. And my brother-in-law took him up there for Father's Day weekend. And when they came back from our tragic loss, we knew that we had to get help. And I went out and searched for help. And the help that was out there was just either inadequate or was a lot of misinformation. It was wrong information. It wasn't helping us. So I stumbled upon the grief recovery method. And when I finished that program, I knew that I had to get this out to every single person that was suffering from a broken heart, just based on my experience. And so together, my sister and I became grief recovery specialists, and we've been teaching grief recovery for 12 years.
Wow, that's a very personal story to take on and kind of share. And it reminds me of my dad, that's kind of a little bit how, you had an experience and you jumped into, like, I need to share this message with the world, and I want everybody to know this work so that everybody has that knowledge.
I think that everybody has at some point a certain message that they realize that message is important and valid for the world to know because you've gone through it. And it's kind of like doing our purpose-driven work where we stop and go, wait a minute, if that was really important to me and I needed that something and it wasn't around, there's got to be other people that need it too. And so that's how you become a light worker, is that you just give yourself permission. You kind of ordain yourself to say, there's got to be other people too, and I want to be that vehicle. I want to be that kind of bridge to get people to cross over and have that kind of a breakthrough. What really connected me to you last night was that I realized that you and I are both heartsy people. And when you're dealing with heartbreak and sadness and pain and suffering, it's great to have the tools when people are sharing from the mind, giving us distinctions to really understand, to help us move forward. However, I feel like a lot of professionals that don't have the context and the ability to go down to their heart and be vulnerable and be authentic and really be kind of be the space for us to connect and cathartically release and heal and do all that magic work that I know that's powerful in training rooms and in discussions that we have. And so you and I kind of, I don't know, it was kind of like this. It wasn't really the words, but it was more of a spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And so I get that your heart's in it, and I get that from you the minute you shared the story about the heartbreak that you and your sister went through. It told me a lot about you and what you're up to, and I'm grateful that you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so awesome. And then just piggybacking on that, I shared a little bit earlier that grief is a normal and natural reaction to a loss of any kind, but we're never taught how to grieve. We're never taught how to do it. And so typically what happens in a tragedy is that we're left to fend for ourselves, or a loss or a death, and we're trying to figure it out. And that's how it came about. Also, you and I shared about grief happens here. It happens in the heart. It doesn't happen in the head. And when we try to fix the head, that's the wrong tool for the job. So I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much.
And it might also, really help some people that are headsy or intellectual. It might be a starting point to start here, but it's to start here and then go down.
Yeah.
And it's not really to go here and try to, that's why a lot of times when people say, help me make sense of it, it's like some things you can't make sense of. Some things are just experiential. So I like that you're validating for people that it is a normal and it's a natural process. And so you got to give yourself permission to experience your experiences.
Yes.
I feel like more human beings, we're slowly putting walls up and we're numbing ourselves from being vulnerable and allowing ourselves to feel the pain. I look at grief as kind of a process of different phases that you got to go through, where you're going to go through all the different feelings and emotions that come up. So is it not just you giving yourself permission to go through that no matter how long it takes for you to get through to the other side?
Yes, absolutely. And it was sort of like you explained last night. That's why I knew you and I were a lot on the same page. It's like you embark on this opening, and walking through that is a path of, it's dark. And so what I do is I go on that journey with you. And it's tough. It is really tough. But I go on that journey with you, and you do have to allow yourself the time to go through it. Because what happens is numbness is the first reaction. We're numb. We're not really ready yet. We're not really ready to receive the message. So sometimes we have to walk that journey and be present and allow the emotion to take over. The biggest thing about walking into that darkness, which is kind of tough, is that we kind of have to go with it. It's like being on a roller coaster. If we push back against the roller coaster, we're rigid, right? But if you relax your body and lean into it, it's a little bit more easier to go with. The flow is a little easier.
Well, that's the resistance that I was talking about last night, is that when whatever it is that you resist persists.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you don't want to go through, you're actually giving that more life of resisting going through the process. So surrender is a great word that I like to use. It's kind of surrendering to allowing yourself to actually go through that process and give yourself permission to go through every stage. And then having a counselor or someone like you that can say, hey, where you're at is perfect. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there is no right or wrong. And let's take the judgment out of it. And let's just give ourselves permission to feel what we're feeling. And then let's have people that we trust to talk about it, just to get it out.
Yeah.
To kind of release it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the things that happens to someone right away that they may be feeling right now is reduced concentration, a sense of numbness. They're going through all of these things. Now, in grief recovery, we don't buy into the 5 stages of grief and loss. Those were actually set up for someone who was actually dying. It was someone who was given an actual terminal illness diagnosis. So we find that people that are grieving, they have to tap into the emotion in their heart of what's really going on, right? So, for example, with me, when Austin died, I needed to complete my relationship with him, and I needed to examine that and look at what was really in my heart, what was really bothering me, what was really left unfinished. And it's through that process that I was able to complete my relationship with Austin, and then I can actually share about him, and I can talk about him.
That is so profound. I never really heard it explained like that. I needed to complete the relationship. A lot of us, the relationship just ends abrupt, and we don't really have a closing.
Yeah.
We didn't, and you think about it a lot of times, like even in marriages, if we're really at turmoil with each other, the relationship stops abrupt, and we don't have closure.
Right.
So, or even business partners, it's just all of a sudden the business, breaks up, and that's how animosity and resentment and regret can be stuck within us in our context. So we need to be able to have, whether it's actually with the well, if they're past, you can't, so you have to simulate it with someone else, or you got to somehow create some kind of simulated process or cathartic process, whether it's writing in a journal or writing a goodbye letter. You got to do it in some kind of symbolic way, such that you're in your mind, you go, okay, all right, I can let that go now. I've completed it.
Yes.
It's now I can let some of that stuff go, such that it opens me up to now move on to what's next in my life.
Yeah. We don't use the word closure, just I'm going to share that with you, because a lot of times people that are grieving don't want to hear that word. Well, you need closure with Austin. That would have really upset me, right? But completing my relationship with him, he and I walked a journey for the 10 years of his life. I was his aunt. And I was there, moments after he was born and until the day that he died. And we had a journey together. But there was this part that was missing that I really needed to complete. And I was able to complete through my grief work, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I think if you interpret closure as the end, then I can see you saying, well, I don't like that word.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like it, so we changed it.
If you can find a new empowering perception, like closure means I'm closing a chapter of our relationship, or I'm closing a part of the physical relationship, because then now you open up a whole possibility that we have now a spiritual relationship that gets to continue.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing that happens that's so amazing through recovery is you have more of the person. You're able to share of them. I'm able to look at pictures of him with fond memories. We laugh about him all the time. He was a quirky little kid, and we're able to talk about him. That's what's so cool about it. One of the myths of and misinformation is that time will heal, and that if we just allow time, we'll start to feel better. But we know for a fact that time does not heal. It's the action steps that we take within time that actually heal. So what people actually do to help them recover, that's what heals them. I've met people 10 and 20 years after a loss, and they're still grieving, right? So we know it's the action steps, just like what you're talking about, completing that relationship.
If you get stuck in that process, then it doesn't matter how much time goes by, you're stuck.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to tee up was the event that we put on last night. We had a panel of different types of therapists put from the Child and Family Center, and we had you, Dad, and a lot of people were able to make it and write down their questions. So they had a lot of questions about their children and support, and I wanted to touch on those questions and get Sharon's view and see what kind of advice you would offer. So one of the really popular questions was, how do I explain, the incidents that happened on Sunday night in Vegas? How do I explain that to my children? How do I protect them? How do I know that they're safe? And those seem to be the most popular questions. And I wanted to hear your side of it, your opinion, how you would guide those parents.
It's so important. This is one of the most important parts of our life, especially as parents, is we talked about we were never taught how to grieve, right? So we have to teach our children how to grieve. So the first thing I want to suggest is that you're absolutely honest, and that you're honest to the age appropriateness of the child, especially with the events of the last weekend in Las Vegas. We don't want to share too much, but we want to share what's age appropriate. But when we're teaching them, there's some do's and don'ts. And here are a few of them, I'll throw them out here, is do go first. Tell your story first. Tell what you're experiencing. If it becomes emotional and you cry, do cry in front of your child, because tears are normal and natural. They go along with grieving, right? Do tell the child the truth. And in that sense, I'm saying, do say death. Do say they died. Do not say they're in heaven. Do not say they've gone on to a better place. We need to tell them the truth. This is how we're teaching them to grieve. I do say, tell the story as much as you want them to hear, and then we shut up and we wait for the questions. The questions will come. It was a lot of what they shared last night, and you wait for the questions. One of the things we do not want to do is ask them, well, how are you feeling? How do you feel about that? Because you're going to get that big giant lie. Fine. They can't attach the emotions to what they're actually feeling. So a lot of times what we'll share with children is, I was really missing Austin today. I was thinking about him, and my heart was really sad. When you were gone at school today, I was thinking about Austin. And I remember that time that we were on the boat and he jumped off and it was funny and we laughed. I might just share a story and just throw it out there. And that just gets them to know that's a comfortable place to talk, and get them to talking and get them to going. I will share with you that when Austin died, his little brother was 3, and we didn't have grief recovery then. And so we shared with Jordan that Austin had gone to heaven, and he interpreted the word, he heard Kevin, and one of a really good family's friends was named Kevin, and he was 3 years old, and he kept asking Kevin, I want you to bring Austin back. Oh. You see how they can mix that up? So you have to tell them the exact words of what's happening, and just be there and talk a lot and answer the questions.
Yeah, I think it's powerful to just give yourself permission to open up the dialogue.
Yeah. Because
they're kids, they're waiting for you to facilitate something. Yeah. They're waiting for you to give permission to say it's okay to talk about this. Yeah. I really love how you said that you got to go. In other words, you got to go first.
You got to go first.
You're setting the context. You're setting the stage. You're modeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also am wondering, for the parents who are having a hard time explaining death, especially in this context. And they do naturally probably want to use the words heaven or a better place instead of saying it. So what kind of advice would you give to kind of assist them in just saying it and being honest?
It's really tough, and you may want to practice it a little bit, but you really got to just say it. And sometimes it's so hard, it really brings up the emotion, and we start to cry. But literally, that's all you need to say. So in a perfect world, I would say, Johnny, I'm so sorry to tell you, our neighbor died. And then that's all you need to say. And if they want to know, they will ask you. And they may not ask you for 2 or 3 days. The questions may not come up until 2 or 3 days. And that's how you're going to know where they're at. And you answer the questions that they ask and leave it at that. But you continue talking about your neighbor and continue sharing about your neighbor. And that lets them know it's really a safe place to go.
And I think one of the challenging things that comes up after you give just the information is how to manage all of your own fears that comes up, right? Because as soon as you say the last words, I'm sorry to tell you that your aunt died, right after that is silence.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that silence is uncomfortable for most of us. And in that uncomfortable silence, if all of your insecurities and your fears come up, you're going to want to fill that silent space with more stuff. And this is where you really have to be committed to kind of bunkering in and just hanging in that silence such that you're observing them to see how they're processing it in the next 3 to 7 seconds, and then create that opening for them to go, and then boom, then all of a sudden now their first question comes up.
Yeah, exactly. We know for a fact, and from studies that we have done, that children between the ages of 4 and 7 can figure out the grieving process on their own, and it's really amazing. You can give them the information, they can process it, they can ask a few questions, and they just know where they need to go from there. They know they need to complete, and they'll kind of complete on their own. It's really weird. We came here with that ability to do that.
I love that.
But by the misinformation we put out, we've taken kids and we change them all around, and we give them a ton of information that's not true. And, don't cry. Do you want to go in timeout? You're being bad. Oh, honey, don't feel sad. Let me give you a cookie. So we're taking away all the emotions, right, from them, and then we destroy what they were already brought here with.
Yeah, and it brings up another point is, as parents, you need to give yourself permission to see your kids with new eyes. And those new eyes is my son or daughter might have the ability or the capacity to actually handle this probably better than I can.
Yeah.
Or create a new belief in your son or daughter, and that belief can be more empowering. Like my kids have the ability within themselves to process this information in a healthy way. In other words, hold them to a higher standard, right, rather than putting them in the box that because of your age, that you can't handle this. But start to see them as whole and complete, and that inside of them, spiritually, they have all the tools within them to handle it.
Yeah.
And stop looking at people as that they're delicate, because a lot of times people aren't delicate. But if they are delicate, they'll let you know that in the next couple of words or the conversation that they continue to have with you going down that road.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of bring up a personal experience of my own, I guess, grieving process. And a couple years ago, when I was a kid, I was about 10 years old, my grandfather passed away. And I remember that night, my whole family being there. And I really feel like the best thing that my parents could have done was to not really say anything. And I think it probably was because you guys were busy in your own process and making your own plans that the kids kind of were, in the background. But it was really good for us because what you guys did was you brought all the mattresses out to the living room in my grandmother's living room, and all the cousins just slept together that night. And it was kind of like you guys probably didn't plan it to work out so perfectly, but that process with my cousins was so amazing because we sat there, and my brother and my sister were there, and we just told our stories. And after the first couple hours, it was really just silence. Mm-hmm. But when we woke up the next morning and we were all together, and that's when the stories came out, and I didn't really expect it to be so soon. I didn't think that after a couple hours of the silence and then going to sleep and waking up that there would be a light in the morning, where we would all be so refreshed, I guess. I thought I was going to wake up just as sad as I was the night before, but I think having my cousins and my whole family there was like enough for me. I really feel like I only grieved for that night, because when I woke up in the morning, it was kind of a process for all of us that I think just unrolled naturally.
Yeah.
That if I was in the same field, I probably would know why. I don't know why, but I know that having my family there and having that little sleepover 100% is the reason why I was able to move on from that and think of my grandpa now in such a good, happy place, even though we went through a year or so of a process. He had cancer, so we went through a year or so of this up and down process that, like I said, that camp out with my cousins was everything. That's exactly what I needed.
Wow, Dad, that was beautiful. That was your story reminds me a lot of what happened to us when Austin died. We all spent the night together. We went over to my sister's house and we stayed together. One of the other things that was really amazing, and I share this a lot, is we never stopped talking about him. From that moment, it was sort of this natural thing that happens. And my heart just hurts for people when they choose not to talk about the dead. There's this old wives' tale, it's ill will to speak of the dead. But being able to talk, the griever needs to be listened to and heard with respect. That's the biggest thing that we can do for the griever. So if I were to tell you to imagine a big giant heart with two big giant ears just hanging off the end of it, that's what the griever needs. They just need people to hear them. And we need to be able to share about that person immediately right after, or that situation, or that loss, whatever it is. And so that was beautiful. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Going off of that, I do remember, we were young, so we were always talking over each other. We were fighting to, have the attention. But it seemed like that night and that next morning, we all knew to just be quiet and listen. So when one person shared a story, no one talked, and then the next person. So it was an experience that I had never really experienced with my siblings or my cousins, because, like I said, we were always all over each other. So it was really, it was just natural. It was a natural process that I can really identify when you're saying from those ages 4 to 7. They're like, you're smart, and you just totally know what to do on your own.
Yeah, it's kind of like you guys completed your relationship with Grandpa right there that day together.
Wow.
Oh, definitely.
That's exactly what happened.
I'm so lucky. I feel like.
So if I'm getting this right, by telling the story, you're giving yourself permission to complete.
Yeah.
To wrap up all the, kind of make sense of all the loose ends. And last night, I had some family members that were there in attendance at the event, and they were all going through their own process in a different way, and they were actually in Vegas attending that event and experienced the trauma. But what was so amazing was afterwards, we got together, circled up, and you saw just kind of there was some prayer there. And then even after the event, when we kind of we didn't literally get kicked out, but we had to let them close up shop. We took that outside, and then we started sharing, and I noticed the sharing of my family members turned into telling the stories that were now funny.
Right.
And so now we were laughing and kind of making light of it. And I was just letting them run it. It's something that was happening very magically and authentically amongst themselves. And then we were kind of plugging in, and it felt playful. And what I visualized, it was kind of like now kind of turning around the corner a little bit. It was kind of like getting to some of those stages that I talked about. It's, whether it's a 7-stage process or a 20-stage process, I could feel it was like, all right, we're still in it, but we're getting around a little hump. Even though there might be 10 humps, it felt good. It felt, really good to kind of now tell the stories about the running and the falling and it was a powerful moment.
So healthy, right?
Yeah.
So healthy.
It felt healthy. Like if I checked in with my experience, by being present, it felt good. It felt like this is the right thing to do.
We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for more of The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
Doing right starts right here. At Union Bank, community banking is at the heart of what we do. From giving customers more convenient access to their money to financing their homes here in the neighborhood, Union Bank believes in acting locally. We also believe that investing in local businesses helps everyone. For over 150 years, Union Bank has grown strong one community at a time. We live here, we do business here, and we're here for you. Stop by your local branch today to experience the strength of community banking. There are 3 Union Bank branches conveniently located in the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley area. To find your nearest branch, visit unionbank.com. Loan subject to credit and collateral approval. Financing available for collateral located in California, Oregon, and Washington. Fees and restrictions may apply. Terms and conditions subject to change. MUFG Union Bank N.A. member FDIC equal housing lender. Union Bank is a registered trademark and brand name of MUFG Union Bank N.A.
Drugs or alcohol abuse can tear a family apart. In Santa Clarita, just like everywhere else, it's an epidemic. The Way Out Recovery is here to help. Call them now at 296-4444 or visit them on the web at thewayoutrocoveryscv.com. The Way Out offers outpatient treatment for adolescents, adults, and family members. The Way Out is compassionate, caring, professional, and confidential. You and your family don't have to suffer any longer. Call the Way Out Recovery now, 296-4444, or visit thewayoutrocoveryscv.com and make an appointment. Asking for help is the first step.
For the first time in our history, 50% off of everything in the store. It's the huge 40th anniversary sale going on now at a Royal Suite. Everything, yes, everything is on sale at 50% off. Bedrooms, dining rooms, living rooms, recliners, and Murphy beds all at 50% off. Even the huge selection of mattresses from Diamond and Englander. See the new line of adjustable beds at 50% off. Nothing will be held back. Everything from every manufacturer. Come early for the best selection. Everything 50% off at the big 40th anniversary sale at a Royal Suite in Centerpoint across from Sam's Club or at aroyalsuite.com.
The most charming new restaurant is now in Santa Clarita. Marston's Restaurant has been a Pasadena landmark, voted the best breakfast in California by the Food Network magazine. Now, discover Marston's new Santa Clarita location, open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Marston's also has a fantastic catering menu that adds a delicious twist to any event. And they cater picnic dinners for that memorable romantic date. Experience Marston's on Newhall Ranch Road in McBean, or log on to marstonsrestaurant.com.
Hometown.
I wanted to let you know that I really appreciate the way you guys do what you do.
Your hometown station.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today we're talking with Sharon Brubaker about how to cope and deal with grief and sadness. Before we went on the break, we were approaching some questions about children, explaining to your children about grief and loss and definitely the events that happened on Sunday in Las Vegas. And before we move on, I want to invite anyone who's listening to jump on our Facebook Live and ask questions. Feel free to ask questions, and hopefully we can ask them here while we have Sharon and get some help for people. So I wanted to go finish your list, Sharon. You went over some do's for the children, how to communicate with children, but I want to go over the don'ts. There's probably a few things that we should not do, so I'm going to go ahead and let you take over.
Yes. So some of the don'ts are really simple. Is don't tell them to not be scared. Don't tell them to not be afraid, because that's a normal emotion that comes up, right?
But let's talk about why you should not say that, because I get, understanding why you would say it to them, but let's talk about how it could affect them. Like, what would it, how would it shut them down?
Well, I feel like it will shut them down because the children will, they won't be able to judge where is a scared feeling, and this is something that I should have, and it's a normal and natural reaction, right? And it's normal to be scared. I was very scared when Austin died. I was scared. I didn't know what it was going to mean for our family, and I was scared. I didn't know what that meant. So it was normal and natural. So we want to encourage whatever that's going to be, and how hopefully they will be able to share and attach in their heart, Mommy, I'm scared, and you can reassure them.
That's right. So it's almost like by you telling your son or daughter, don't be afraid, now you open up a possibility they create a limiting belief about their emotions.
Yeah.
And so a good possibility is, wow, I can't be afraid. I have to be strong. So now what we're doing is we're creating emotionally shut down kids that aren't tapping into their emotions anymore. And those are the kids that I see a lot of times in the training rooms when we're asked to experience our experiences. They can't, because they've been raised in homes where it wasn't safe enough to share or feel their sadness or feel their pain or even express themselves.
But I think most importantly, it's stopping their grieving process. And going back to my experience, my parents didn't need to say anything. They didn't need to say it's okay to be scared, because I could tell on their face they were scared.
Right.
You know, they weren't afraid to cry and show their emotions. So let me know that every single thing you're doing right now, I can do.
Right.
And because I was able to do that, I think it is what pushed me through the grieving process. And I think in our now my adult mind, for parents, you know, in our adult mind, saying don't be scared, we're saying that because we're saying you don't need to be scared, but that's not what us as kids are hearing. We're hearing don't be scared because we're not allowed to. And they can't really distinguish that difference.
That's right.
Right. Think about one of the myths we talk about is being strong. And we will what happens to us is we try to be strong for the griever, right? It was something that I did very much for Erica. I thought that I should lead her and guide her in this grief process. What if we try to be strong for our children? What if what if Dad decided he wanted to be strong for you, and instead of showing you emotion, he went in the room every time he wanted to cry and he closed the door? How are they going to learn to grieve? How are they going to learn what they're supposed to do? So my very first grieving experience was an aunt that passed away when I was 14. She had a brain aneurysm, and my parents stayed at the hospital for 3 days, day in and day out. They didn't come home. We didn't have the mattress. I'm not blaming my parents at all, but this was my first experience. And the next thing we were doing was planning the funeral. And we were, yes, together as a family, but we got right into planning the funeral. We never talked about this and how it makes you feel. My parents never came to us. They don't speak ill will of the dead. And that just was how it happened. And it marked, I think, probably how I ended up dealing with Austin all those years later.
Now, the people that were in Las Vegas when this terror was being rained down on them, and now they're dealing and coping with the trauma of trying to get back into their life, there are some big time fears of being, back in public environments. And I know there's a lot of fear around being safe or feeling safe or trusting and being more secure. I know you have some bullet points about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people are still skittish and they're, kind of not feeling safe and sure of themselves.
So just real quick, there's 43 known losses that we can experience over a lifetime. And as we sit here and talk, we know that death and divorce are the most popular, right?
Right.
And so those are one of the ones I see most of my clients for. And those are all tangible. Like, I know I got a divorce. I know this person died. But there's these untangible losses that we can experience as well. And a couple of those are loss of safety, loss of control, right? Loss of trust. In my heart of hearts, I just am so broken for everybody that was in Las Vegas this weekend. I've talked to quite a few families and just gone over the stories with them. But just think about they're suffering from their loss of safety. It was always okay to go to a concert. I wrote a blog the next day, and we as Americans got hit right dab in the heart. We're at a country western concert in Las Vegas with our country boots on, having a beer, enjoying ourselves, and boom, this happens. Should I go out in public anymore? Can I go out in public? Where am I going to be safe? Every time I hear a siren now, every time I hear a truck backfire, the fear that comes over them is just unbelievable.
As you're sharing that, it reminds me of a time when I was a young man. One of my jobs was a loss prevention officer, so I had to catch people that were stealing from the store. And one time, me and one of my buddies had to chase a guy down that stole some Levi's, a big stack of Levi's. And I guess he was on drugs, but he had a gun with him, and he was waving the gun at us. And And I remember after we ended up calling the police department and we caught the guy, I remember that next morning waking up, I was feeling anxiety, and I was stuck. I was in this fog, and I had this overwhelming fear that either the guy was going to come find my home. Like, I literally, just hung out. I hid out the whole day, and that when that fear comes, it feels real to you.
Yeah.
You literally your mind makes up these stories, and you really go down this road. And if you let your mind wander, it can come up with some incredible stories that will create the fear to not let you get back on the horse and ride again. So I remember feeling stuck for a good day and a half. So I can imagine what level that these people must be feeling, and how courageous they are to every day get up and say, I'm going to keep moving myself forward. I'm going to keep moving myself forward. And I think a little bit at a time, you'll start to see that the clouds are moving out of the way, and that there's sunshine at the end of that tunnel.
One of the stories of one of the ladies that I talked to that was actually there on Tuesday, she said it was becoming more real to her than actually Sunday and Monday. And she said she had this feeling that she has to keep moving. She has to keep going. She's like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I got to go up the stairs. I got to go down the stairs. And even her husband said, what are you doing? She's like, I don't know. I just got to keep moving.
Yeah.
I just got to keep moving. So the fear and the closing their eyes and hearing those gunshots over and over again is absolutely, just heart-wrenching.
One question I really want to have answered, especially for me and probably a lot of listeners, is how do I, as a family member or a friend, support the people who were there? One of the questions that came up last night was feeling like helpless. There's nothing that you can do for them. And like my dad said, we had family there, and my aunt was there, and I see her, she wants to probably move on, and she probably feels a little bit stuck, and I want to know what I could do for her, what my dad could do for her, my mom as her sister, her family. What would you give us as the family tips to do?
So one of the things we talked about last night is that don't worry about having the perfect words. And this is, a lot of people call me because I'm the grief recovery specialist. So they're like, oh, Sharon, my neighbor's friend died. And, they want to hear advice from me. You know what the answer to that is? Sometimes there are no words. Sometimes all I do is just go, let them know I'm hearing them. You've got to be the heart with ears. You have to be the listener. They need to talk. They are the people that need to talk. They need to talk it over and over and over again, because what happens is, I really believe, this is what I truly believe, that it doesn't hit us right away, the true magnitude of what has just happened. So a little bit seeps in, a little bit at a time. It just seeps into our brain, right? And by talking it through, we're accepting a little bit more of that and a little bit more of that. What we need to be careful of is if we find somebody 2 years later, you've met this person, I can tell you who they are, they got a divorce 2 years ago, and they're still complaining about their ex. That person that's still talking is really stuck in a grieving process, and they need to be helped to come out of that. But right now, what your aunt needs is just to be listened to and heard. There are no words, and maybe she won't be speaking. Maybe she'll just be quiet. And I talk a lot about holding her space. You need to hold her space. What does holding her space mean? That means be present. Be there for whatever they need. We don't touch the griever or stop them if the emotion becomes overwhelming. So if the griever starts to cry and really gut-wrenching cry, we're just going to sit there. We're just going to be there. And then we will offer them if they need, would you like a hug? I even did that to one of the ladies last night. Can I give you a hug? And she was like, absolutely. We don't hand them tissue. We don't push tissue in front of them. You're just listening, just like you and I are doing right now. And you shared this beautiful story. And I mean, it really touched my heart. And I just listened to your story. And that's what we need to do. We need to be the heart with ears and listen. People need to talk. They have a lot of talking to do.
So the little things like giving them a tissue, touching them when they're crying, is it because it's taking them out of the experience, a distraction?
Absolutely,
Okay.
100%. We take them out of the emotion. So if you had to start to get emotional right now, and I would have gone, and handed you some tissue, you'd have been like, okay, crazy lady. But it also stops the emotion. We want the emotion to come. We want the authenticity to just really come out of there. And so that's what we're allowing you to do, is have that moment.
Yeah, in the training room, when we do catharsis, a lot of times I'll tell the staff, hold off on the tissue until they've completed their sharing and completed letting it go. Then you can subtly slide it over their way and then let them grab it. A lot of times it does take them out of the experience. And a lot of times too, like I notice if I want to give someone tissue or if I want to do like this, it's my own stuff. It's my own uncomfortableness with it. Yeah. So I want to
Don't cry.
Yeah,
don't cry,
yeah.
little girl. Oh no, don't cry.
We might not
be
we might not be saying it.
Yeah.
But it's just another symbol of
It's okay to put the tissue there. You're an adult. You know if you want to wipe the tears from your face.
Yeah.
People will know that.
Yeah.
They definitely know that. And a lot of times what happens is because we become uncomfortable, we want to stop that emotion that's going. That's not a safe place for the griever. They need to be able to talk. The other thing is we don't know how much time they're going to need. So we can't tell them, aren't you over this? Shouldn't you be over this by now? We don't know. And if they get a safe place with you, they will talk, and they will talk a lot. And that's amazing.
I love that you said, be a heart with ears.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing statement because
He's going to steal that, by the way.
I probably will steal it.
You can have it.
I probably will I'll steal it even if you don't give it to me, because it's such an amazing, and it needs to be repeated because what I visualize is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is something that you have that's already innate in you. You just got to be able to bring your walls down and allow yourself to be revealed. And there are no words in vulnerability. It's not a doingness. It's a way of being. And if you just become vulnerable with people, what happens is your ears open up very profoundly, and you become that space that you're talking about. That space is just vulnerable, and then you're just a committed listener.
Yeah.
And sometimes those tools, like Carl asked last night, I need some tools. Your tools is that you have a compassionate heart, and that you have these ears that you can just be a compassionate listener. That's it. And you don't have to be the guru. You don't have to be the grief counselor. Yeah. You qualify because you have love for the other person, and you have an ability to listen. So be that space for them, and also believe that people have the capacity to heal themselves.
Yeah.
You can heal yourself.
Yeah.
I'll just be here just to listen to you.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be patient with you, to go along the journey with you for as long as I can.
And that's what I am. I'm a guide on the journey. That's all I am, is a
Yeah.
guide on the journey. And here's the other thing. You can't fix it. I could not bring Austin back, even if I wanted to. I couldn't fix that for Erica. The clients that I talked to this week that have been in Vegas, I can't fix it for them. But I can listen. I can be that heart with ears for them.
Before we want to break, I want to get to this question. I felt like it was really important for, I think, the grieving process for the people who are in Vegas. How do they deal with feeling guilty for being alive?
Okay, so in the Grief Recovery Institute, we teach that guilt, the definition of guilt, is it with intent to do harm, right? With intent to do harm. So I have to ask them. On Tuesday, I had the conversation with the lady. She says, I felt so guilty. Someone got shot right in front of me, and I didn't stop, right? I feel so guilty. And I said, well, did you have intent to do harm to that person? And she was like, no. Then that's not what you're feeling. Let's talk about your emotion of what you're really feeling. Let's tap into the emotion. So there's some people that can actually own guilt, right? A rapist, right? Child molester, he can actually own guilt because he or she intended to do harm to someone else. But if was not your intention, then you actually can't own that as an emotion. So we have to replace that with what are you feeling?
But we are owning it. And that's why
Yeah.
I love this discussion, because what it's saying is that you're owning something that's not due to you.
Yes. Yes.
You're taking guilt and you're spreading it around onto things that doesn't deserve it.
Right.
So in other words, you don't deserve to be guilty. So you even just giving yourself permission to be feeling guilty is not deserving.
And typically what happens with the guilt is that the emotion is something else. So we have to dig a little deeper and find out what the emotion was. And
What are some of those common emotions that from the past of working with people?
my heart is just really broken. I feel Johnny committed suicide. I feel really bad I couldn't help him. I feel guilty, right? They'll tell me I feel guilty. Well, did you intend to deceive him or do harm to him? Well, no. Then what is it you're really feeling? I really miss him. I really miss him. I'm so sorry that he went this way.
So like family members that were there, and when that critical moment came where everyone hit fight or flight and they all separated from each other. They were family members.
Yeah.
Dads, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, and we split. And then now all of a sudden you're getting someone, you're like, oh my God, where's my loved one? Now you can give yourself that guilt upon yourself that's not deserving because you didn't have the intent with the purpose to split. It just happened, right? Some things in life just happen, and then we make up stories and then we paint this other picture onto it. So what could they be feeling that is countering the guilt that they can choose?
So it's either if the family member has passed away, it's that they're really sad, right? They're really sad.
Right.
My heart is broken. I miss them. Or it could be that that they just went with the fight or flight. We talked about this last night, and that's our natural desires to go, to self-preservation, right?
Right.
So that could have taken over. And then I asked her, I said, what was your reasoning for keep running and not running into the guy? And she said, I had 4 little reasons. She has 4 children. And she said, I had to get back to my children. I had to get back to my children. And she said, the other thing was, I don't know anything about medical. There's nothing that I could have done even if I stopped. So we just had the conversation and we just talked it through, and she shared those things.
And I think the trick is to find empowering perspectives that you can grab onto that justifies why you split, right?
Yeah.
We have to take a quick break, but stay tuned for more of The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
Unleash the terror! Six Flags Fright Fest. Horror at every turn with thrills by day, fright by night, and the scariest coasters in the dark. Face your fears in 13 haunted mazes and scare zones, including Suicide Squad, the Six Flags Fright Fest experience, and new this year, spine-chilling encounters in the city of Metropolis. Buy a 2018 season pass and get free admission to Fright Fest, presented by Snickers.
Healthcare can be difficult if you're underinsured or have Medi-Cal. Samuel Dixon Family Health Center can help. Services are available on a sliding fee schedule. The mission of the Samuel Dixon Family Health Center is to give the Santa Clarita Valley access to affordable, quality primary care. There are 3 locations to serve you: Canyon Country, Newhall, and Valverde. Go to sdfhc.org for more information and to find the location most convenient for you.
There are times when nothing else will do because you know exactly what you want. You want the Alamo, the taste of true Mexican cooking at its best. At Alamo, you're treated to a taste that is truly Mexican with an atmosphere to match. Enjoy a Cadillac margarita, try a mucho burrito, or sizzling fajitas. Voted the best Mexican food in the SCV and a favorite of former supervisor Mike Antonovich. Alamo Rotisserie in Granary Square, serving Santa Clarita for over 30 years.
Hometown.
They're amazing, and every single one of their songs is amazing, except for like one.
Your hometown station.
Welcome back. You're listening to the
That's
Inspirational
my dog.
Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today we're in the studio with Sharon Brubaker, a certified grief recovery specialist, talking about how to cope and deal with grief and sadness. So before we went on the break, we were talking about some misinformation that we get in the grieving process. So I wanted to go over some of those.
Yeah, just real quick on that. I'm going to circle back real quick. Some of the things we can say to someone, the one thing that I say a lot is I do put my hand over my heart. I will try to put emotion words to what they're feeling. Oh, sounds like this is really sad for you. Sounds like your heart is really breaking, to see if they will attach to that. But the one other thing, the most common that I say is, I can't even imagine what this must be like for you. I can't even, because I don't know what they're going through. Grief is unique and individual to each person, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there that we get and that we've been taught, and we learn it over the years. One of the most common is that time heals. Oh, honey, just give it time. You'll feel better in time. I've heard today, I heard a psychiatrist say 2 years It'll take 2 years and you'll be over it.
What?
Yeah, he actually put time on it. Yeah.
Wow.
2 years. Yeah, can you believe it? Grieve alone. You should do this alone. And this is especially for people who don't want to have their children see them, or they will grieve alone because they don't want people to know they're still hurting, so they keep it quiet. Be strong.
Now, can people grieve alone? Are there some people that can and still come out of it in a healthy way?
There are action steps that will actually help you. Can you?
Because I don't want people to hear it like what I'm doing is bad and wrong. Like, you know, because we start off saying that there's no like right and wrong way to go through this. However, from being a specialist, you've narrowed down a path to help us get through it in a more healthier way, and to support us. Correct?
100%. Yeah, you're correct. So what I have to say about that is I actually have met people that have had grieving experiences, and on their own they have figured out their pathway. They absolutely have. So yes, people typically come to me when they can't figure it out, when they absolutely can't figure it out. But like we were just sharing last night, if 2 or 3 months into this you are still in bed and can't get out of bed, you're probably having a grieving experience. If all you want to do is talk about the incident 2, 3, 4 months later, you're probably having a grieving experience. If you don't want to talk about it, you're probably having a grieving experience.
That's what triggered me earlier when I asked you to let's revisit that, because the purpose, I think, of grieving and having people listen to you as you're sharing, and I tell people a lot, when you're sharing or when you're asking forgiveness or whatever it is that you're communicating, especially if it's something you're holding on to, I want you to do it with the intention to get off of it.
Yeah.
I want you to share, and I want you to communicate this such that you surrender it, such that you let it go. If we're not surrendering, letting it go, or getting off it, then we become like a broken record. We keep saying it over and over. Because remember last night I said, I want you to keep saying it so much until you actually get tired of saying it. So you got to say it so that you get off of it and let it go.
I'm going to cut you off, Sharon. That's all the time we have, but I want people to know how to get a hold of you. Phone number, website, email. What's the best way?
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Sharon Brubaker, and you can reach me at SharonBrubaker.com. My email is Sharon@SharonBrubaker.com, and my phone number is 661-212-0720, and I'm right here in Valencia.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. right here on your hometown station, KHTS.